When I first started the business 12 years ago, of course, joined the Pinellas Realtors organization, and the then president of the affiliates actually nicknamed me SnoopDogg back then. So really, almost need to change my middle name to SnoopDogg, that I'm J. SnoopDogg Smith around town.
Alex, you need to put a picture, a thing of Snoop Dogg, crop it right here at that point of the podcast. Okay. All right, everybody, welcome to the Trust Business Podcast. I've got a special guest today, Jay Snoop. Jay, thank you so much for coming on.
Great to be here.
Jay Snoop, you're with a Snoop Inspections,
Yep.
a home inspection company. You do wind mitigations for my company. These guys do a phenomenal job, so I'm very happy to have you on.
Okay.
So let's start off to tell us about you, how you got into the construction space. I know you've been in that forever, since you were a kid pretty much, and then how that transitions to doing
honestly,
your own thing.
my father was a GC.
Yeah.
So when I was a teenager, I was already, probably shouldn't have been out in the field, but I was out there when I was 15. You know how it is. I mean, especially
I was the same way.
Back in the 80s, you could get away with it.
Yeah.
Better than you can now. I hate to say that. But, grew up in it. My father actually built our first house when I was like 5 years old, and he wasn't even a contractor then. He owned a pizza shop.
And you remember seeing him at like age 5 building the house.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
he literally framed it, pulled the wires, did the drywall, nailed the shingles, the whole 9 yards. Matter of fact, speaking of the shingles, his old boss in his pizza shop came over and nailed shingles with him.
Really?
So you had two pizza guys on a roof nailing shingles. No, you're talking about 19...
Was his name Mario?
Now you're talking about 1973.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different than today.
Yeah.
But he built that way back when. And then, honestly, he decided years later to get into construction, got his GC license when I was a teenager, and that's how I ended up doing this. I actually got my own GC license at 24 years old in Virginia.
Wow,
So
that's really young.
I kept doing it. Burnt me out a little bit, and some things changed. I ended up here in Florida, and that's when I decided to get into home inspecting, to be honest with you. I didn't want to go back to full-blown contracting because it's a lot of work. I feel for those guys that are in that industry.
It is tough, that's for sure. Okay, so then how long have you been doing home inspection and doing a Snoop inspection?
2011, 12 years now.
12 years, wow.
So, yep, been doing that for a long time too.
Wow. So obviously your background in building the homes makes it a really, probably a smooth transition to get into looking at every bits and pieces and parts of it.
I get a lot of phone calls. I mean, real estate agents that are especially their kid is buying a house, their first house, they want some experience. When you're looking for your home inspector, I would definitely recommend that. Not every home inspector is going to have the experience I do, but at least have the boss with that. Because I go out on all the older houses. If you're 1960 or earlier, even if I have another inspector out there for a full inspection, I stop by the house. Just because I want to take a quick look around. Sometimes I can spot something on those old homes that they don't necessarily see all the time. But I've got great inspectors out there.
Right.
We were talking at one time, and they typically spend a good 6 months with me inspecting before they're out on
Yeah,
their
that's what you said. That was amazing. You do 6 months of training with someone and then you send them off. Now, is that person that you did 6 months with, are you bringing them from the ground up, or do they already have some background in that situation?
Well, I mean, it does change a little bit. If I've hired someone that has a decent amount of experience and are already fully licensed and they're coming to me and I bring them in, it could be less than the 6 months. But it depends on their background. I mean, they could even with the license, I could spend 6 months with them. The class doesn't teach them how to be a home inspector. That's not part of the deal.
Right.
I mean, that's probably the same as roofing. I've never taken the roofing test, but I'm guessing just because you passed the roofing test doesn't make you a roofer.
Yeah, I mean, it has nothing to like the licensure test has nothing to do with the field and working and the understanding how that goes. It more has to do with, I would say, how to run a business on the back end, qualifications in terms of that. And it gets into codes, you really, even from doing it, I know my roofing code just from studying for that test, so It helps with that. But yeah, the actual physical, what goes on when you're installing a roof, doing it right, dealing with the homeowner, dealing with your guys, you got to learn that yourself out in the field.
There's a lot more to it.
so home inspecting, I can imagine, is the same way.
It is, exactly. It doesn't teach anything. It's funny, some of the things they have to learn in home inspecting during the classes that don't exist in Florida, because you're really learning the nation and not Florida. And of course, Florida, I mean, you moved here from another state at one time. It's a little different than some of the other areas.
Very much so. Let's see. Home inspecting. Okay, in Florida. Florida is interesting in terms of building. I find there's like you'll find some very interesting things, very unique things. I mean, anywhere, but here for sure. What like tell me something you find over and over again that maybe would surprise someone else watching, just in terms of construction, something to look out for when you're buying a home. Or
I mean, it's not a huge thing, but it's something I see on a regular basis in Florida is installing entry doors backwards. They go to Home Depot or Lowe's, it's handyman, and they buy what's called an outswing door. It has an outswing sill, and they install it as an inswing.
Okay.
And it will leak in a driving rain. And I see it multiple times a month.
got it, because okay, the way the waterproofing is designed, and then
Yeah, I mean, it'll actually channel water into the house. It's not a lot of water because you still have a seal there. But if you install an outswing door as an inswing, it kind of has a little trough, and you'll have a puddle on each side. It's funny how you'll look at the trim on either side of the door real quick, and it'll have the water stains on
Yeah.
it from it doing it over the years. But it takes a driving rain. If it's just falling from the sky and not just driving onto the door, the water doesn't go in there. But you get these winds and the thunderstorms that way we get, and the driving rain, and that door will leak every time.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something like to be aware of as a homeowner going into that, because I remember when I like bought my first house here in Odessa. I bought it, I got an inspection, and then we kind of got into it, and I started to do the roof. I was replacing the roof, and there was a ton of termite damage. And the termite damage 100% could have been caught in the attic. And if I had known that going into that, I could have negotiated something or done something. It was too late, I wasn't able to. So, your role you play is so vital in that to, try to help safeguard a homeowner who's going into that, make sure they know everything about that house. So in-swing doors, what are some other things you'd recommend a homeowner looking out for, I don't know, when picking their home inspector, or also just when buying the homes, things they can watch out for?
Well, one of the things that pops up, I think, in the last couple of years is they keep adding, well, they don't keep adding, there's 4 main panels on the, do not have that in your house list as far as electrical panels. I mean, Federal Pacific and Zinsco and Sylvania have been on the list for many, many years.
And what are those? Those are manufacturers?
They're manufacturers, and they're just considered defective panels, so they're very difficult to get insurance on.
Got it.
The one that was added a few years ago that's popping up, and some people don't even realize they have it, and that it's an insurance problem, is the Challenger. So the Challenger panel, which hasn't been put in houses for several years now, but it's starting to pop up because they were installed until the 90s. So now insurance reports are starting to catch them, and someone's like, "Well, I have insurance." Like, yeah, but this is new on the list.
Right. And sometimes that kind of thing can be interesting because it could even be missed during the original, deal. But then an insurance guy comes a year later to inspect your home, and if it got missed then now they're going to detect it, and then now they could give you an issue on it.
Let's say it's a 1994 house. It wasn't that long ago, and you didn't get a 4-point inspection until it was 30 years old.
Yeah.
Well, that's just now.
Right.
So now you would know. And plus, it wasn't even on the defective list. Say you bought the house 6 or 8 years ago, it wasn't considered a defective panel at that point. So even the regular home inspector, if they were just doing a full report for you, may not have called it out then. But now it is. So now you're stuck, and you're like, I got to spend this amount of money to change this panel out, that they're not always happy about it.
Right. And those rules and stuff are constantly changing. Let's see. One thing we can compare this to in my world is the roofing, obviously. Like, roofing is interesting because sometimes I'll see a home is like a 15, 16-year-old roof, and an insurance company is saying like, oh, this has to get replaced right away. And the home inspector is saying, oh yeah, it's old and needs to get replaced right away. And then sometimes I'll see, like on the corollary, a 19, 20-year-old shingle roof, and I'll see the home inspector like, yeah, I think it's got a few more years left, 3 or 4. The insurance company actually waives it okay, I've seen. And it kind of just seems to depend on the insurance company, seems to depend on the home inspector, what kind of his thoughts are. And it seems like a little bit not always clear cut. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know it creates confusion for homeowners because sometimes, 15 years they have to, and another one's 19, they don't. They're like, what's going on?
Well, I think there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of variables on the roof.
Yeah.
How well is it ventilated? Is there tree coverage on it? Then if there is tree coverage, where they keeping the leaves off of it instead of them, creating the problems that leaves and all that stuff does on a roof. So there is a lot of variables to it. And then on top of it, I mean, the quality of the shingle.
Yeah.
There has been some defective shingles through the years. Believe it or not, I actually saw a house that had defective peel and stick, SWR.
Really?
Yeah.
What was going on with it?
It was practically melting into the attic. Like when you got in the attic, you saw the black goop, basically the adhesive
coming down,
just drizzling down everywhere, and to the point where you'd see it coming down on the fascia. If you had white fascia, you'd have these black streaks.
Wow.
There's a church that I noticed. I think it's in like the south end of downtown Clearwater. I believe it's off Fort Harrison that I noticed that it had black streaks. I'm like, I bet you they got the
feeling stick.
Feeling stick. Just driving by it on the street.
Was it not ventilated also? Because that could make that worse if it was really hot in the attic, I would think.
Yeah, I mean that makes it worse also.
Yeah.
I think the main defective peel and stick that came around was like 2016. There was a batch that came out, and they were actually paying to replace quite a few roofs.
Wow.
But it may not show up for a few years.
Right. A good topic on this is like secondary water barrier, the nailing pattern of your deck sheeting, and then your hurricane clips. Factors in order to mitigate your wind risk, and then insurance companies give you a discount on that. So from you as a home inspector, what are those points? Obviously, you know them like
well, of course,
back of your hand.
You know the peel and stick's the easiest thing to add, and you're getting a discount for that. The clips is the biggest thing you can add. That's the biggest discount. So
what's the percentile like discount usually on clips that you find?
Well, and here's the problem. Like we just talked about, every insurance company is different.
Yeah.
You know, I believe some insurance companies, there's actually not a difference between doing the hurricane clip or a single strap. You know, that it's the same discount. But then I think there's a few insurance companies that give an additional discount for the single strap.
Yeah.
So it does change. If I owned an older house, I would definitely upgrade to the clip. I mean, there's no doubt about that it's worth the money, unless you're only going to keep the house for a year. Then it may not be worth it. But if you're going to keep it 3 years or more, 100% worth it. And I think it's worth it to you that you end up either breaking even or coming out ahead.
Yeah.
Plus, it's a selling point.
Yeah.
So now I feel like your house is worth a little bit more than your neighbor's house.
Yep.
That probably still has just a toenail, that you're a better setup than, you know, most of the houses in your neighborhood, because I'm sure the majority have not upgraded.
Yeah. And one thing we train our reps on is to look out for that, and then just at least put it out there as an educational point. Hey, you don't have any, so that means your insurance rate would be higher. If you want to add them, it's about this much. That's up to you. But just so that they know, because like you said, over the course of 3 or 4 years, that insurance break will pay for, and then you're just going to start to make money on having done
absolutely. And that's why I like working with you guys, that you're trying to step up and do that. I can tell you, I found very few roofers 2 or 3 years ago that were doing any of this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to see a upgrade and a retrofit was very rare. I mean, literally you get down to like once or twice a year.
Right.
And that was it when I was inspecting houses. Got to keep a little bit better eye out for it. But, you know, the other thing that's interesting, and I don't know if you know this or not, here in St. Pete, there was actually at least one builder, if not 2 builders, back in the late 60s doing single wraps when it wasn't even a requirement. I can tell you, if I'm in another county, Hillsborough, Pasco, any one of them, I typically, if I'm in a 1980s house or earlier, I know I don't have any kind of clip or single wrap. It's just going to be a toenail. But here in Pinellas County, I've actually seen it. I think the earliest one I saw was 1968, and you can tell it's the original single strap.
And a couple of GCs kind of got ahead of the game on that. That's interesting. Yeah, and we've talked before too, because there's some funny things about the clips where, like, okay, for example, they have to have 3 nails, and sometimes they used to do them with 2. And if you now have that 3rd nail, now your rate goes down. And we joke, we're like, what if they say 4 nails? What if they say 5? And then all the ones that got done with 3, and then you're like,
I mean, you really never know. They could change the parameters tomorrow for all we know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh man, oh man. Okay, let's see. Talk to me about, okay, so you do your own thing. You have your business. You have, 4 inspectors or so who are going out and about and running and stuff like that. What challenges do you face in that? And then what have you, I don't know, like any things you've learned or advice for other business owners in terms of like managing people, maintaining high quality? Because I know I use you guys all the time. Yeah. You guys are very solid. The inspection results are good, and you're always there to be in touch with. I've never had like any customer service issue with you guys. You seem to run a pretty good ship, so.
Logistics, I mean, you know how it is. I know you do roofs all the way down to Northport and even a little further than that, Cape Coral. We do service several counties now, and we are growing the business. I'm probably in the process of honing in and trying to keep the inspectors closer to home.
Yeah.
Instead of so much travel, and I'm sure you guys are probably doing the same thing, that you helped out with the storm.
Yeah.
But hey, that's not needed as much, maybe pull them back a little bit. That's the hardest thing, is logistics. I mean, someone wants Tuesday and your inspector is in Hernando County and he's the only one that's available to do Land O'Lakes, and it's just a good distance to jump from one to the other. And it is, the wind mitigations aren't as bad because we're just getting set up with you guys and they're just turning this into their insurance in a normal time period. But regular home inspections have to be timely. They may have a 3-day inspection period, 5-day, 7-day. So it's like we've got to be out there right away.
Right. So you have to balance it between A, what you're able to do, and then B, their needs and wants, and then sometimes you have to combine the two and just figure out something to make it work. I hear you.
Typically don't want to be out more than 3 or 4 days, and you can pack in those 3 or 4 days real quick.
Right. No, and I agree, because if you start to get beyond a certain threshold, you start to get no's from the other sides, and they reach out to you, hey, I want a home inspection. Oh, well, I'm 7 days out. Oh, that's okay, I'm going to call someone else. You're like, okay, well, you just lost business right there. But then so it's a balance of keeping your inspectors booked that much, or like us with our crews, we're 2 weeks out. That's the most I'll let it go. I mean, sometimes, and that's on shingles. Like if it's metal, tile, commercial, that'll go further. But if my shingle schedule starts to go beyond 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then I know that I'm going to have homeowners on the other end who really want to get it done, or realtors, because sometimes they're in a pinch. They got to sell it before, get the roof done before they close the deal. So you start to get into that. So we constantly, like if I start to get to 2 weeks and it starts to get beyond, I'll add another crew if I have to. But you do what you got to do to maintain that. And then sometimes you'll have a client who like really needs something quick. They actually legitimately need it within like 3 or 4 days. So it's kind of creative. Like maybe there's someone else who's not as high priority who would be willing to move, or maybe that sales rep or that repair tech or someone can do a little bit of a longer day or whatever. And just being able to get creative at the end goal of obviously servicing the client.
That was definitely one of the changes for me doing home inspections, because when I was doing GC work, we were 2 months out all the time. So you were planning that out way ahead, getting different permits in. Of course, I don't have to get permits for inspections. That makes life a little bit.
Yeah,
I'll leave
lucky.
the permits up to you over there with the
Yeah, you're lucky.
I'm sure it gets tough for you in the summertime because, boy, when we get into the rainy season, getting the work done and everyone's finding their leaks at that time, they're like, I need a roof tomorrow.
Yeah, no, definitely when you get the big rains, you get a whole sweep of things, because it makes it more challenging to do the current delivery, right? To install the current roofs. Because here in Florida, like where I'm from in California, when it would rain, you just shut the whole day off on the calendar. You said, okay, it's raining on Wednesday, no one's going out. But here in the summer, you look at 5 days, right. But usually, you get a feel for it. Usually it's about a afternoon thunderstorm, the most common, sometimes in the morning, but it'll kind of come in with a big hit and then it'll be nothing the rest of the day. So we had to learn how to make that work where we still are productive. We get a certain amount of the roof done. Usually we'll try to take, say, half of it off and then get half of it dried in and shingled before. But getting creative like that, in order to meet that demand and everything. So, no, it gets interesting. But then the other thing you get with the big rain is then you get people with leaks and they want them repaired right away. You get some callbacks and you want to deal with those within 24 hours always. So there's a whole sweep of things when we get big rain. So
makes fun.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. That's a good point. That's the thing about all this, like what I do, and I'm sure on your end what you do is you have to have fun with it. You have to enjoy the process, enjoy what you're doing. Like I find a way to enjoy like the crazy logistical figure outs and, oh, that sales rep's got an issue there, that repair guy's got an issue there, boom, boom, boom. If you don't, then, what's the point?
I enjoy the business, all ends of it. Of course, the office time and computer time is the least fun, just the necessary evil, as I would say. But even the contracting or the home inspecting, always somewhere new.
Yeah.
Even in a given day, if you're doing 2 full home inspections, you could be on a multi-million-dollar house in the morning and a mobile home in the afternoon. It could be that drastic as far as difference. Matter of fact, today I'm doing a 6,000 square foot house this afternoon. So
see if they need a new roof. I'm kidding.
We'll see. It's not that. It's only a 2008. So.
Oh, okay. Never mind. That's fine. They can go a little longer. But I was going to say that's one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast too. It's just something fun to do, off of the computer and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and get to know them a little bit more outside of things. It's like you can't tell when I'm sitting down, but I'm 6'3", but I'm actually the short one in my family. My brother's 6'8".
Your brother's 6'8". How tall is your dad?
My dad was 6'3".
Nice.
So we were the same height, but my brother got all the height out of it. He also got all the hair, which I'm still upset about.
Nice. Let's see. As someone who's doing home inspecting and doing that as like your trade and your profession now, what would be your recommendation? I have a lot of like roofers who will watch this, roofing company business owners. What would your recommendation be to them from things you've learned, things you've seen?
Well, one of the things that you guys are very helpful with is you take pictures along the way. If you guys are upgrading the clips and moving them up from an old toenail, it helps us because those attics are tough. You can't always get a really good
can't
picture
see anything sometimes
from inside. So that's helpful. Even the pictures along the way of the peel and stick and all those kinds of things help us as a home inspector and make life a little bit easier. And all I have to do is ask y'all and send me over a pack of pictures.
I like that you brought that up. Yeah, documentation is so huge. I'll do a quick shout out. We use an app called Company Cam, which is an awesome app that all of our crews have, all of our project managers, our foremen, everybody. And it keeps track of all of those photos in the cloud. So you don't have to save them on your computer, then move them to a drive here, no, they're just all up in the cloud there. And then a little thing we do is we have on a piece of paper the permit number, the address, and then our logo, the name of our company. That way, every single photo, not only is it a photo of the stuff, but it also proves that it was that permit, that address, at that time frame. I think we have the date on there too, just to show that's when it was taken. So there's no question about what project is done. Because I remember before I had that, like I would take photos and I've had people test me, are you sure that's my house? Are you sure that? I'm like, yes, I'm sure. But it's like a close-up of a strap or a clip or a close-up of a piece of wood. You wouldn't be able to tell unless you have that proof to document it.
I don't think it's as much of an issue now, but there was an issue, 8-10 years ago in my industry where there were guys not filling out reports properly. And they were using packaged pictures that they had taken along the way and not necessarily inspecting that house. I've had the question before and they're like, hey, this house, according to the wind mitigation that was done 6 months ago for the owner and they were buying the house, it has single wraps. And I'm looking at it, it's like, no, this house, all it has is a clip. You can see it clearly in my photo. And I was like, send me the wind mitigation. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this other house, and the picture I'm seeing has OSB.
And you have plywood on this one.
Plywood on it. And I'm like, that's not even your house. I mean, I'm telling you that whoever did that report falsified it. And that's not good. I mean, I am a stickler on, being that home. Every picture has to be. Absolutely. Even if I go back out and redo one, I don't like keeping the old pictures. I will just take brand new photographs. Now, if I'm only out there in a difference of a week, there may be a couple of pics that I can use on the old stuff. But if they call me back a year or two later, need a new 4-point, it's all brand new pictures.
You do them new, nice. And I think that app I was saying, I think they actually also, they geostamp it. So they geographically say, hey, this is where that photo was taken. And then they timestamp it. So that's a really cool tool. But
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jay. I freaking appreciate the time. Appreciate your wealth of knowledge. Always a good time sitting down with you. If there's any homeowners who are watching this, any of my audience who needs help with a wind mitigation or a home inspection, I 100% recommend you guys. What's the best way to reach out or learn about you guys?
Our office number is 813-345-2600, or you can go to www.a-snoop. And
I'm going to ask you one more question before we get up. How did a Snoop inspection, how'd that name come? I think it's a great name.
My last name is Smith, and I wasn't about to be Smith Inspections. And I'll be honest with you, before I started the business, I just sat down probably once or twice a week and just brainstormed for a while and wrote down names. And it popped up one day, and it was like 3 or 4 weeks in. And I said, okay, that's the direction I want to go. And it has stuck. People remember me. I mean, I'll even meet someone today and they're like, man, you've been around for a while because it's memorable. If I was Smith Home Inspections or S and whatever, J&S Inspections, it wouldn't have taken.
I love it, man. That's awesome. Though a Snoop, it's so smart because Snoop, you're looking around, you're sneaking, and then the logo of the dog with the magnifying glass. But no, that's huge. Like even me with Trust Roofing, I find that it's memorable. People can remember it easily. One of the reasons I switched to this name, it's going to sound silly, but when our name used to be T&G Roofing, literally when I would try to give them the email over the phone, they couldn't even remember. I say, it's Robin at tandgroofing.com. Wait, how do you spell that? How do you? You said T and what? G and what? But now I say, yeah, Robin at trustroofing.com, and they just get it immediately. So just the power of something simple, something memorable, you can't underplay
When
that.
I first started the business 12 years ago, of course, joined the Pinellas Realtors organization. And the then president of the affiliates actually nicknamed me SnoopDogg back then. So really, almost need to change my middle name to SnoopDogg, that I'm Jay SnoopDogg Smith around town.
Alex, you need to put a picture, a thing of Snoop Dogg, crop it right here at that point of the podcast. Okay, Jay, thanks for the time. We appreciate
Thank you.
Snoop Inspections. Check them out, guys. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
All right.